Today we'll be looking at the Beethoven Moonlight Sonata, Opus 27, number 2. You're looking at the B section of Movement 1, where it can be a little bit tricky to read, but actually technically very easy to play. The two things that make this a little bit tricky for people to read are the key signature mixed with the accidentals being used, as we see things like F double sharps, A sharps, and then a mix of natural signs next to sharps. It can get a little bit black on the page, as well as the pattern of the notes being very up and down, at first seeming very random, but luckily there is a ton of pattern to what is happening here in the B section. First, we're going to take a look at the simple part of this, which is going to be the bass line. We'll see throughout this G sharp repeated as a pedal point, really throughout most of this B section. The pedal point is used to create this sense of energy, in this case the dominant fifth note G sharp of our key C sharp minor. But eventually does resolve to the C sharp right over here, right before we begin our A prime at the bottom. When we repeat a pedal point, it actually will start losing harmonic information, and we can mix it with different chords while keeping the insistence on driving our ear back to the C sharp at the end of this, getting us back into our tonic of the piece. Now we look at this last two measures before we go back into C sharp. We notice it also will start and end on the G sharp, but over here we will see that we use our primary tones. We have our 4, 5 resolving to 1. While over here, we have our 5 stepping up to the 6. For this 5, 6, primary tones 4, 5, 1. Easy enough to memorize. Makes a lot of sense, especially once we learn more about the chords in the right hand, how they support this 5 to 6 motion. Now let's go on to blocking out the right hand of this B section. A lot of what we're dealing with here are fully diminished chords. Any of these measures that have accentals in them through this part right here are all fully diminished chords. And the nice thing about fully diminished chords is they have a lot of enharmonic spellings. So even though over here this is spelled as a B sharp fully diminished, it starts on the D sharp. All we have to remember is this D sharp right here. I mean, think about it as a fully diminished chord starting on the D sharp. So this is where we can kind of go through here and say a fully diminished chord starting on the D sharp, a fully diminished chord starting on the C sharp, a fully diminished chord starting on the F sharp, and then a fully diminished chord starting on the B sharp. Helps simplify this a lot. Now, we'll notice we should have 2 beats per measure with the cut time. We're going to talk about it as though this was common time, just to simplify the talk a little bit. So we can think of it as 4 quarter notes per measure, with each quarter note being subdivided into a triplet, giving us 12 total eighth notes per measure. And now we can actually play these as blocked chords using 4 notes at a time. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's my shift to the A. 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, actually notice right back over here, this final shift is another D sharp 1 octave higher, and it's the same 4 notes. Block it out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We go over here. 1, 2, 3, 4. On the F sharp. 1, 2, 3, 4. C sharp. Once again, the note we start on is the what we return to 1 octave later on the C sharp. Right over here, starting on the F double sharp, and then getting back to our C sharp. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, It stays the same over here. F sharp, 1, 2, 3, 4. On our B sharp, 1, 2, 3, 4. Once again, starting on F sharp, the last pattern also comes back to the F sharp. Over here, this is our B sharp, but as we stated earlier, whether we call this by any of the 4 names in here of a D sharp fully diminished, an F sharp fully diminished, an A fully diminished, a B sharp fully diminished, this F sharp fully diminished and a B sharp fully diminished are actually just the same chord. And so we can actually take, and I don't really memorize this note heavily. I know that the pattern by ear follows the same logic. Now let's talk about the pattern that's being used in all these fully diminished measures. Over here, I see my interval going up by a diminished fifth, down by a minor third, and then up by an augmented fourth. But we know that diminished fifths and augmented fourths are enharmonic. They sound the same. It's kind of the trick of why there's so many ways to spell the fully diminished chord. And just like over here, when I see an augmented second, my augmented second is enharmonic with my minor third. So I can simplify this in my brain by up a diminished fifth, down minor third, up a diminished fifth, down a minor third, up a diminished fifth, down a minor third, and this is the pattern we see repeat all throughout here. Up a diminished fifth, down a minor third, up a diminished fifth, down a minor third for all these. Right over here, we'll see the pattern flipped backwards. Down a diminished fifth, up a minor third, down a diminished fifth, up a minor third. Through this descending pattern here, it just inverts the pattern. And so, we do have this one measure over here that doesn't use a single accidental, because this is actually just C sharp minor in this measure. So, we want to make sure we know what note it's starting on. So we find our principal note, and it is the E. We're going to be blocking this one out in a different pattern. As we see, not only does it go up, it goes down as well. Here we have our E, and on the top over here, we have another E. So this can all fit within a C sharp minor first inversion full octave with the E on the top and the bottom. So then we'll be doing our shift right over here, having a 2 note, just this C sharp to G, and then we take another octave higher, first inversion C sharp minor, full octave with E to E over here. We can think about this being blocked out in 3 groups. We have our first inversion, C sharp minor, with the E on the top for a full octave chord. We have our C sharp 5, as we don't actually need to worry about playing the F sharp here. Then we go back to that same voicing from earlier, first inversion, full octave, 1 octave higher. 12. Let's talk a little bit about how we now memorize the pattern here in the most simple way, at least to me. So over here, my principal note over here is my D sharp. Going to my principal note E, I have this half step ascending. Just like how this is technically a B sharp fully diminished, resolving to C sharp minor, I have that half step motion in my harmony. I also have the half step motion in my principal notes at the beginning of each pattern. And now this is where we go away from just being in C sharp minor here. I'm going to highlight this last note that we end on, this G sharp. If we use our circle of fifths, G sharp would resolve to C sharp as a dominant tonic relationship. We keep the circle of fifths going, and our C sharp would then resolve to F sharp. We then can keep this entire pattern going through here, and we get to our voicing section over here that we work on separately. But it keeps it really nice and simple. I have D sharp resolves up a half step to E. I finish on G sharp, which resolves to C sharp, which resolves to F sharp. And the rest of it is just this nice repetitive pattern. So we'll start with measure 32 with our fully diminished chord starting on the D sharp. Block it out. be the 4 triplets per beat. Now make sure that we have it to where we can play this in time and keep our emphasis pattern somewhat even. I have the metronome set to 50. We're gonna go beat by beat. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Making sure I hear the subdivision in my head before I start playing. Now let's add the E at the end of this, getting used to the shift in time. Great. We're going to be going just over the next group of the fully diminished measures, jumping to measure 34 next, as once we kind of get this method of practice, it is just repeating this process over each measure. So on to measure 34, the fully diminished chord starting on the C sharp. We'll start on that measure 34, first blocking it out, making sure we've got starting on the C sharp. Right over here, starting on the F double sharp, and then getting back to our C sharp. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. last note. And finally go to the F sharp. Now, same logic with the F sharp. Measure 35. We have our F sharp, up to our B sharp, back up to the F sharp. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Where you can start hearing this pattern, and it's the exact same fingering every single time, which is why I like this for the memorization. Creating this, once we get this rhythm pattern in our hands and this emphasis pattern, it's just repeating it, it's just sequencing this. And this is all just sequence material for all these. And then take the descending one, starting on this B sharp over here, noticing that it's 1.5 measures long before the voicing comes in. We have, starting on the top note now, our B sharp, F sharp, B sharp, F sharp. And then there are like two more notes at the end of that, but those are better practiced when you try and work on transitioning into the voicing section. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Let's turn the metronome off for this one, since it is a different pattern. Because we are now reversing this pattern down, inverting it. That's where we want to try to get that even. Here, I'll make sure I get that fifth finger back in there. Good, now we have one unique measure in this section, which is just a C sharp minor arpeggio. We can think about this being blocked out in 3 groups. We have our first inversion, C sharp minor, with the E on the top for a full octave chord. We have our C sharp 5, as we don't actually need to worry about playing the F sharp here. Then we go back to that same voicing from earlier, first inversion, full octave, 1 octave higher. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Many notes. It's actually one less that time. Good. Now let's remember our D sharp to our E, ending with the circle of fifths with our G sharp to C sharp to F sharp. So let's get on to this voicing section over here. Over here, we have a section where we go away from single stemmed eighth notes to double stemmed notes here. Whether it's double stemming eighth notes with quarter notes, or eighth notes with dotted quarter notes. This shows an implied melody that begins here. So we'll be marking this melody out. We notice it starts right over here. I'm going to mark these quickly because this program does not like it when you take breaks from marking in material. I got a little lucky. That worked. Cool. Let's talk about what was just marked in there. Let me get my tool. And so over here, we have our melody begin on this A and bring us down to the C sharp. We now will have this B sharp, the leading tone of our C sharp minor. and we see it walks down here repetitively. For people that don't have as strong, ooh, let's see what happened over here. Okay, we're just going to eliminate that for right now. So we then have this repeated pattern of D, C, B, D, C, B, D, C, B. And there's one to look out for over here, and this would be right over here where we see our D natural. We'll put a star next to it. So whenever there's something that is going to take a little bit extra practice or focus, I always like to put a star next to it to remind students this is something to think about. This is something that either requires a lot of practice, memorization, or better understanding. So if you understand what the Neapolitan 6 chord is from earlier in this piece, this is just a Neapolitan chord. The D is now in the bass, and we have this same flat 2 harmony being used in a subdominant fashion. Now, if that seemed like complete jargon and you have no clue what I'm talking about, you can also rely on a knowledge of modal scales. A lot of this is going back into C sharp minor, but this has become a little bit darker with all the fully diminished chords. So here we're using a darker version of a minor scale called a Phrygian scale. And we have this leading tone B sharp, our C sharp, and now this flat 2 over here that would be borrowed from the Phrygian scale. And so we can think about this going from C sharp minor to C sharp Phrygian, right over here with this flat 2. And now, if you also are hearing this word Phrygian, and you have no clue what your modal scales are, this is where the star comes in. You'll have to remember there is a D sharp you'll have to remember there's a D natural right here. You'll have to get used to the sound of this note and spend a lot of time reviewing this section, making sure you don't get confused with earlier sections and thinking this is the same as the earlier passages in the music. And it just takes a little bit of extra practice and daily review in this portion of the music to keep it in your head correctly. Now we get to this eighth note harmony over top that is really reminiscent of the A section, where we are no longer using the arpeggios seen earlier in the B section, but we're going back to a broken chord pattern, staying within its range. And over here, we keep this B sharp fully diminished pattern going throughout most of this right here, with some passing tone of G sharp being used, but with G sharp in our bass, not even really thinking of it as a passing tone. It is just creating this G sharp 7 flat 9 sound. It works really well. Melody. Broken 1. Broken 2. Overvoiced. Now let's talk about the harmony in these last two measures of the right hand. As a review, our bass line is going with 5, 6, 4, 5, 1. This is going to help us better understand why we have this sixth tone right here in the bass when everything else is primary chords. Over here, we have our B sharp fully diminished, But when we put a diminished chord over top of our dominant, we just do get a 5-7 chord. So right here we have our dominant 5 chord, and we see over here these stacked thirds over the A create our A major chord, the 6th chord in C sharp minor. And this actually would be a deceptive cadence when we don't resolve to the minor 1, but instead step up and resolve to the opposite tonality, a major chord, specifically the major 6. Now we go over here, we might think, oh, I'm going to be using my 4 chord, my F sharp minor. But no, we actually see this stacked in the root position right over here as a D sharp half diminished chord, which makes a lot of sense. It's the 2 chord, and the 2 chord is a very common subdominant chord to be used as a half diminished. The missing note F sharp is the F sharp presented in the bass. And then over here, big thing to watch out for, we do have our 5-7 chord over the G, now presented very straightforward. We see on beat 3 the G sharp, on beat 4 the F, but this entire composite would be considered the 5-7 chord, just with the alternating note in that center position. Now we look at the voice leading of this. We'll see right over here our C sharp staying the common tone between A to D sharp half diminished, keeping that C sharp in the top voice. Now from our D sharp half diminished, we keep the common tone D in the lowest voice of the right hand, while over here, going from our G sharp 7 to C sharp minor, keeping the G sharp as the common tone in the middle voice, following all of our voice leading rules for cadences. And this last 2 measure transition back into C sharp minor. As a review, our bass line starts on the 5, steps up to the 6. We take our primary chords in C sharp minor, 4, 5, 1. This enables the use of this deceptive cadence we see at the beginning here in the right hand, where we have this G sharp 7 resolving to A major. Usually a deceptive cadence people think about in major resolving to the 6th tone minor, but it can happen in minor as well, where the 6th tone, rather than going resolve from G7 and resolving to the minor 1, we step it up to the A, which happens to be major in our key signature. Being deceptive, going to a major cadence right here. We have our deceptive cadence. Even though we go to this F sharp in the bass, we actually will have a D half diminished in our right hand chords, which makes a lot of sense. This is the 2 half diminished of C sharp minor, one of the most standard subdominant chords you'd have in a minor. This half diminished 2. For 5-7, with G on beat 3 and the F sharp on beat 4 to resolve us into our C sharp minor. Here we keep the common tone into the C sharp in the top voice. Here we keep this D as the common tone in the bottom voice, and we keep the G sharp as the common tone in the middle voice.